Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new movie review on the Goku Report. Now, this is going to be the first of a series of many reviews in the future. Shows retro wave music in the background today for what we are talking about. And the first in the series of this long running, many year franchise of over 40 plus years now. As you see right here with the steel bookcase. This is going to be the first of a series of on again, off again reviews of the Star Wars franchise. A franchise that has always personally held a big key importance for me personally when it comes to films. And I am one of the, I guess you could say, defenders of the prequels when it comes down to it. For a few many things, and first of all being, I like the Star Wars prequels more than many people out there, I will say. So, with that said, this is the review and some of my thoughts on the first film in the discography by episode number, not by original release date. Otherwise, I would be starting with episode 4, A New Hope. So, we are starting with episode 1, released in 1999, episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Fun fact, I saw this film 4 times in theater in 99. It would be only the second film I would ever watch over 3 times. Though I would end up watching this 2 more times in the 3D re-release in theater. Total, I have seen this film 6 times in theater, more than any other movie ever. Just an interesting little fact. And yes, I get why people hate episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I get it. People have a deep hatred for Jar Jar Binks. Why? I will never understand the deep hatred people have for Jar Jar. I personally got a kick at him, and I wasn't even really the targeted demographic, keep in mind, when episode 1 came out. Because it was supposed to be more for children. Keep in mind, I was 14 and almost 15 when episode 1, The Phantom Menace, came out. Though, I remember in like 96, 97 seeing the special editions re-released in theaters. And that's what I grew up on, was the special edition original trilogy. So, episode 1 doesn't bother me. Now, one of the first things I like about episode 1, I'll be honest, is the opening after the crawl. You see the blockade of course, the ships for the Viceroy and the Trade Federation. We see, obviously, supposedly representatives for the Chancellor, which we end up learning, of course, is a Jedi Knight and his Padawan, which, of course, being the Padawan, obviously, being Obi-Wan Kenobi. And played by, of course, the great Liam Neeson, with the lovely long hair, playing the role of Master Qui-Gon Jinn. Now, I'll be honest up front, I really liked the choice and casting of, honestly, Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon. One of the reasons I actually really liked this film, even though it wasn't his greatest performance, because once you've seen his performance in an incredible film, but will hammer you in the emotional department, is, of course, Schindler's List. But when it comes down to it, I like the way this opens. Yes, I get why some people didn't like the stereotypes of, obviously, the members of the Trade Federation, specifically Viceroy and Newt Governor, and the others. And of course, we see from the shadows of a projection, Viceroy and one of his commanding officers talk and say, "Lord Sidious, we do not dare go against the Jedi." And he's like, "Viceroy, get this stunted slime out of my face." And, of course, obviously, we already, who saw the original trilogy, know obviously who this Lord Sidious is. And, of course, then we end up seeing them trying to gas once they realize that the representatives are actually Jedi Knights, thanks to a TC-14 android. Similar model to, of course, like a future soon-to-be introduced character C-3PO. But they would end up escaping, of course, being tempted, and we would, for the first time ever, meet what would in future become a meme, with, of course, the droids being all about Roger, 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 Roger. And, of course, destroyers, as they call them, the roll droids, which, personally, I think is one of the coolest android designs I've seen in any sci-fi film ever. I'm, in all honesty, the roller droids, as I call them, are awesome design with the built-in shield generators. I think it's a superb android design, better and pretty much about my favorite droid design from Star Wars as a whole. And also, may I just add, the soundtrack to Episode 1 is superb. I love the soundtrack to The Phantom Menace. Yes, I get it why some people don't like elements, of course. Once Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan get onto the planet of Naboo, obviously to try to help rescue and prevent them from obviously getting their hands on Queen Amidala of the Naboo. Of course, as we see right here, Queen Amidala, which is one of my personal favorite characters, and I think Natalie Portman was a perfect casting choice at the time for Queen Amidala. Also, I just want to quickly praise this film for one specific thing from John Williams, and that being the soundtrack. Just before we get towards the end of the review, I'll just say, Duel of the Fates. In some areas, I dare say I may like Duel of the Fates a little bit more than the Imperial March. Just saying, I love Duel of the Fates. Also, of course, we would end up seeing them get released and escape, obviously, the two Jedi, and they come face to face with what becomes many haters' worst nightmares, and that is the introduction and debut of Jar Jar Binks. One of the most despised movie characters of all time, for unjustified reasons, I might add, and the fact a lot of old school Star Wars fans bash on people like us who attacked people involved in the new Star Wars Disney era trilogy, which is made strictly for a profit, and that's it, no actual heart involved. Unlike the prequels, which actually had heart and soul in them. They weren't made to strictly make only a profit, because John Williams, of course, is always doing the music, but more specifically, the creator himself, George Lucas, was involved. I don't care what the haters say. I will continue state I like Jar Jar Binks. I always have. I never will hate him. The fact is also Jar Jar was, technologically speaking, far advanced for the time, because he was really the first ever full motion capture CG character in a big major motion picture. Really, had Jar Jar have not happened in 1999, even Andy Serkis and Peter Jackson said that Gollum would probably, or rather the way we know of Gollum today, as a motion capture character may have not existed had it not been for Jar Jar Binks. And you don't believe me? Look it up in the extras in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like 40 hours of extra footage. They actually mention it, that they gave a lot of thanks to Lucas, and even said, even if they didn't like the character Jar Jar, Jar Jar was a revolutionary thing for the time, from a technological and also computer programming standpoint. So I want to make that perfectly clear. I like Jar Jar, I don't hate him, and I will defend Jar Jar, and the actor who played Jar Jar did not deserve the hate he got. I'm talking you original Star Wars fans who continuously to this day bash on the prequels. And specifically talking to you, John Campia. But anyways, again with a bit of this and keep this relatively short review. But we end up, they get there, they of course meet the Gungan race, which I actually think is an interesting race that lives underwater and stuff on Naboo. Also, Naboo is one of my probably top 3 favorite planets of all time. That's one thing I like about Episode 1, the introduction of Naboo, which would become one of my personal favorite planets, though also the true introduction of the capital of the Republic for more than 5,000 years, and of course that is Coruscant. Also, we are introduced to, at the time, a younger, true rising politician, representative, and senator of Naboo. And of course that is Senator Palpatine of House Palpatine. And if you don't get reference when I say House Palpatine things, I'm referring to elements from the novel Darth Plagueis. But with that said, great introductions and everything we see between Hemians. But before that, they end up getting hit when they try to get past the blockade of the Trade Federation. So they have to end up going on a plan to fix their Naboo cruiser. And they end up in, of course, Tatooine. And we would see the introduction of perhaps the most important character in history of the galaxy and the future of the Republic. And of course that is the introduction to a young repair child. And the first thing he says when he sees Amidala, of course, "Are you an angel?" And of course, fun fact, the kid who played, obviously, Anakin Skywalker, played about a year prior in the Christmas holiday action flick with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jingle All the Way. That's a fun little fact. But with that said, even though the acting was a bit wooden and stuff, to be fair, he was like 8 at the time. Didn't deserve the hate he got from the original Star Wars fans, which ended up getting him into screwing up his life because all that deep hatred and crap I don't appreciate from the original hardcore fanboys. And they ruined his life for quite a few years with drug issues and many things. But let's not get off topic. I don't want to get on a big long rant, which I very well will if I don't stay on track. But continuously with the film, we see, of course, the introduction of also a certain mention of Gardulla the Hutt, which would be the first time in the cinematic universe the mention of Jabba's sister, Gardulla. Gardulla is also mentioned quite a bit in the novel Darth Plagueis, because she would originally be the ruler of Tatooine, though thanks to backroom economic politics and stuff, Jabba managed to eventually dethrone his dear aunt, which of course is his father, which hasn't been mentioned in the original or the cinematic universe as of yet, Zorba the Hutt, and of course brother to Gardulla. But we would end up seeing more stuff, and we would get one of the coolest things ever, which is the pod racing scene, which from a technological standpoint, with the CG animation, 3D graphics and everything, this film was incredibly advanced for its time with the special effects and everything. I mean, The Phantom Menace is revolutionary for its time in 1999 when it came out. It blew anything else of that time period out of the water in special effects. Nothing came close. George Lucas really is a revolutionary when it came to special effects. He revolutionized so much stuff in cinematic domain that he had pretty much revolutionized so many things going all the way back to the 70s. He also was one of the original, of course, ones who actually started Pixar, fun fact, besides Lucasfilm and LucasArts. But also we would, of course, get an incredible racing game based on the pod races and stuff on the Nintendo 64. Of course, that being Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer. one of the best racing games of all time, in my opinion. Also, we would get a great, in my opinion, PS1/Dreamcast game with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace game, which is great. But with that said, we would continue on. Of course, we see more introductions and characters. We finally go to Coruscant after he is able to free Anakin, of course. And so we go on and we see basically the debut and stuff, the introduction to a younger Sith. At the very end, when they're getting ready to leave Tatooine, attacks, of course, Qui-Gon Jinn. And of course, that is one of everyone's now favorite characters of all time, Darth Maul, which remains a true badass of the Star Wars series with his dual lightsaber and the Duel of the Fates music when he ends up in that triple battle against Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan is amazing. The cinematography and everything of that fight scene, still to this day, honestly, I still love it. I love rewatching that scene off and on. Even this many years later and many, many times. I mean, I have seen this movie over 40 times. If that says anything, I can, for the most part, quote this movie word for word. If that says anything about how big a fan I am of the prequels. Do I think it's relatively weak versus other Star Wars films? Yes, most definitely. But with that said, even with all of its definitely mistakes and flaws, at the end of the day, I love Episode 1. I always will. I mean, before I finish up, I will say, I think the pacing at the end is superb and great, and I like the interactions. Also the fact, of course, you have introduced, obviously, early on in the film, R2-D2, as well as the introduction that Anakin actually was the one who created C-3PO, which is quite interesting. We have many other things, of course, we learn. Then Anakin goes before the council, because Qui-Gon wants him and foresees he could become a great Jedi because he has the highest midichlorian count of all time. And when he's in the Jedi Temple doing tests with Master Windu and Master Yoda, they ask and stuff, and they're like, can sense fear in you, or like, since you're afraid to lose someone. And Anakin says, what's that got to do with anything? And Yoda is like, everything. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. I sense much fear in you. Of course, after the big final duel, Qui-Gon would end up dying at the hands of Maul, and at the end it looks like quickly Maul is going to kill, of course, Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan succeeds, slices Maul in half, and he drops down the tubes at Naboo. And by miracle, the Gungans are able to hold their own against the droid armies of the Trade Federation. But it ends up also, Palpatine manages to get him to do a vote of no confidence in Chancellor of Aloran leadership of course, the Galactic Senate. And so they vote, and they replace him. And he is replaced by the now new Supreme Chancellor, or rather just Chancellor at the time, Palpatine. Which, of course, at the end, when we see the old school warrior death funeral for Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, or not Obi-Wan, but Master Windu and, of course, Master Yoda are like, there is always two Sith, a master and an apprentice. And Windu is like, but which was destroyed, the master or the apprentice? And then we fade out a little in distance, and we see Palpatine's face, obviously alluring to Palpatine is the true master. Behind the scenes, he is Master Darth Sidious. And now he is Chancellor of the Republic. First step towards his grand master plan, or rather the master plan of him and his master, Darth Plagueis the Wise, from the novel. But with that said, this is just a basic little review discussion video on Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. What, at the end of the day, do I give Episode 1 The Phantom Menace on my grading scale? I give, regardless of what some people may think, I give Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace, even with some of its issues from time to time, maybe nostalgia factor, and given I don't hate Jar Jar, I give Episode 1 The Phantom Menace a B+ rating. Not quite an A, but it gets a B+ for me. And personally, I liked Episode 1 a little bit more than Episode 2, which we'll talk about in the near future when I review Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. With the introduction, one of my personal favorite character, or rather, armor designs, of course that being Jango Fett. But that'll be in some other time. But with that said, that's a basic review, in my opinion, on Episode 1 The Phantom Menace. Tell me what you think of the retro wave music chosen in the background. I'll see y'all next time. Stay safe. Leave a comment below and tell me, what are your thoughts? Do you, like me, not have the same deep hatred for Jar Jar as many other people out there, like John Campea and others? But with that said, and if you don't care much for the prequels, give a solid argument as to why. Because I'm curious to always hear why people dislike the prequels, not just over fanboyism. That's not a good enough argument, in my opinion, from a logical perspective. Especially given how much the fanboys destroyed some people's lives. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. See you soon enough again in a galaxy far, far away. This has been the Goku Report. See you soon.